Okay, I plan to put out these lists once a month until I've fully completed my list. So in continuing with my top 10 favorite films per genre series, and given that it's nearing Halloween time, I present to you my top 10 favorite horror films. I also want to point out that if you don't hear any music next as I'm describing certain picks, and this applies for future videos in this series, it's because I don't have appropriate music to play along with that pick. So let's start with my number 10 favorite horror movie, and this, in a way, is a guilty pleasure. I mean, if I see more classic horror films that I haven't seen, and those films will be unnamed, this might be bumped off the list, but Piranha 3D, or as I like to call it, Girls Gone Wild the movie. And no, that is not the reason why I like Piranha 3D. Mainly the reason because it knows what movie it is. I know a lot of people hate this movie because of how stupid it is, but the fact that Piranha 3D embraces its stupidity is kind of what I liked about it. And being a Jaws fan, there are many little hints and references to Jaws that I found really amusing. And I don't know, it was really fun seeing it in the theater. I mean, it really isn't scary, but it's certainly a fun movie to watch. I mean, basically what you need to do, you need to get a lot of your friends together, you need to get beer, lots of beer, and you'll have fun. I mean, and I say it's Girls Gone Wild the movie because, I mean, I have never seen so many boobs in a movie before than I have in Piranha 3D, and I mean, it's not a good movie at all, but because it embraces its stupidity and it knows that it's not a good movie, I had fun. Plus, I'm a big Jaws nerd, and those little references made me laugh. So, Piranha 3D at number 10 as a guilty pleasure. And again, it might be bumped off if I see another really good horror movie. And speaking of good horror movies, number 9 is actually a movie that came out this year, in fact, and recently came out on Blu-ray. Cabin in the Woods. Much like Piranha 3D, people either really love this movie or they really hate this movie, and I think the hate towards Cabin in the Woods is probably stronger than it is towards Piranha 3D. Unlike Piranha 3D, though, I don't understand the hate towards this movie, and this is not a guilty pleasure. I really do love this movie, Cabin in the Woods. It's very much like Evil Dead, in a way, like just horror comedy, really creative in terms of its premise, and I don't know, another fun experience I had in the theater, although would have been more fun if the theater was packed like it was for Piranha 3D, but that's beside the point. It's really creative in terms of the way it takes this some kind of Friday the 13th-ish plot to it, even though it took from Evil Dead, but it's still in its way creative, and it can be funny at times, not laugh out loud, but really it can be humorous. And it also can be scary at times. There were a few points in the movie that I kind of went, whoa! But, I mean, it balances out the horror and comedy in the same way Evil Dead does. I guess if I had a complaint near the end of the movie, and I don't want to get into any spoilers for those who haven't seen it, but it feels like a completely different movie by the last probably 45 minutes. But, I mean, I still really like the movie. It didn't really hurt it. I mean, hell, it's on this list, so obviously it didn't hurt it, but I think it's interesting. It's really neat. And yeah, Cabin in the Woods. Number 8 is a movie that I actually just saw today. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And really? You think I like that piece of shit? You know I hate Michael Bay. I mean, I ripped apart the last 2 Transformers movies, for God's sake. There we go. Thank you. Now, this is a movie that I know people aren't decisive on. People really do love this movie. You know what? I actually take that back, because I know one person who says that this is the one movie they hated out of everything this person has seen, and I'm worried that if I post this video, I'm really worried that if that person sees this video, that person is going to march to my dorm with a hammer and hit me over the head with it. So might take a gamble on this, but I don't care. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, out of every horror movie I've seen, this is probably the one that made me cringe the most. I mean, I've seen a Saw movie before, but with those, I was like, haha, stupid. And with this, like, I actually cringed, but was scared, really, also. And, I mean, it's an exploitation movie from the 70s, in a way. I mean, it is a classic, but it's... But what's different about this that separates from other exploitation movies at the time is that it's not really graphic. There's not a whole lot of blood, despite what the title of the movie is, and it's mainly more psychological horror. And that's kind of the way the most effective horror. Not gory. I mean, I know I just put Piranha 3D on the list, but not gory horror. Psychological horror, or building suspense, is the best type of horror out there, and it's looks really outdated, which is another gift to the movie, that because it looks outdated, it makes it even more scary and gritty. And the ending just kind of leaves you with that uneasy feeling. I mean, it's one of those endings where it'll piss people off, or it'll just kind of leave an impact on you for a while. So that's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Number 7 is another horror movie that unfortunately got the Michael Bay treatment. Nightmare on Elm Street, and no, I do not like that movie. I don't like any of the Michael Bay remakes. Yes, that masterpiece. At a time when slasher films were at their heyday, I guess, in the 80s, with Halloween, Friday the 13th, and so on, Nightmare on Elm Street came in and was basically unique. Basically, what if there was a killer that could only kill you in your dreams, and if you die in the dream, you die in real life? It's really a creative idea, and when watching the movie, there are several times you don't know, is this a dream or is this reality? Because, I mean, it's edited, like, in a way you just really cannot be sure. You can only be sure if there are supernatural things that happen, or if the iconic killer, Freddy Krueger, is in the same area as the main characters. It's creative, it's scary. I mean, long before I even saw this movie, back in elementary school, we went to this camp one time, and my friends would go, 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. I had no idea what they were talking about. I thought it was just some, like, kind of, I guess, a meme before memes on the internet existed. But then I saw this movie, and it's like, wow. I mean, really one of the great horror movies out there. Nightmare on Elm Street. Rock on, Freddy. Rock on. Now, number 6 is The Birds. Now, before I saw this movie, I was actually thinking, am I gonna like this? Am I gonna be scared by this movie? I mean, am I just gonna laugh at the fact there's a bunch of birds flying around attacking people? There's no way I can get scared of this. But under the direction of the master of suspense himself, Alfred Hitchcock, scary stuff. And what makes this even more scary is that the original story that this movie was based off of took place in Santa Cruz, or near Santa Cruz. And given the fact that I'm here at UC Santa Cruz, I'm just kind of like, you know what, if the bird apocalypse should ever happen, I'll be ready. I mean, if anything, I'll embrace it. I wonder if everyone else will be ready. Oh well. Anyway, The Birds, under Hitchcock's direction, it's very suspenseful. Mainly the fact that, like Rear Window, all the music you hear is in background, as you saw in my Rear Window review, and there's no actual score. I mean, Bernard Herrmann is credited there, but it's more like for the sound effects. All you mainly hear is sound effects of birds, and I mean, great performances from people like Tippi Hedren, who is probably my second favorite Hitchcock blonde, as they're called. And the other cast is good. And it's intense to watch at times. Not like something that'll make you cringe, but just kind of like, wow. I mean, especially the ending. The ending, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, leaves you with an uneasy feeling, although I don't think anybody can watch The Birds with that ending and not be pissed off. Because, I mean, it's Hitchcock. How can you hate Alfred Hitchcock? I mean, it's a really great movie. And will you birds shut up? It's 9:46 at night. Why are you even out? Jesus. But that's The Birds. Great movie, but noisy animals. Number 5 is probably the definitive horror movie to watch on October, and it'll be the first time owning it in time for Halloween. I saw this, first time I saw this was back in 2007, and this was probably the first horror movie that I mean, granted, I did stay away from Jaws for a while after seeing it, but this was one where I really was terrified. Like, for a whole day, I was scared. All I could think about was how freaking scary Halloween was. And, I mean, a lot of things credit for the movie. One thing, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, not a lot of gore for being the first slasher movie. The music is terrifying. I mean, it's just that dee-doo-doo-dee-doo-doo-dee-doo-dee-doo. But, I mean, without that music, this probably would be a bad movie. But, okay, I guess not, because, I mean, it does have great performances from Don Pleasance as Dr. Loomis, Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode. Michael Myers is a great horror icon. Probably the most haunting because it's just a guy in a white mask. I mean, and granted, Jason is a guy in a hockey mask, but just this figure that all they say about him in this movie is that he's evil. That's it. They don't say where he's from. They don't say he had family issues. Zombie. All they say is he's evil incarnate. He's the devil. That's all you need to know about Michael Myers. And, yeah, I mean, mixed with the horrifying cinematography, music, and direction from John Carpenter, makes for a scary movie, and I imagine when I watch this on Halloween, I will probably shit my pants. But yeah, Halloween, really good movie. Number 4 is another horror comedy that I adore more than I do Cabin in the Woods, and you probably heard me mention it before. Well, its sequel anyway, Evil Dead 2. Out of all the Evil Dead movies, unlike Toy Story, where it was impossible to pick one, it was easy to narrow down that Evil Dead 2 is my favorite of the series. I mean, granted, if you look at it as a sequel to Evil Dead, you're going to be like, wait, why would he go back to the house? If he knew this happened before, why would he go back? But, I mean, this one's even more creative because it had more of a budget than Evil Dead did. And, it's just balls to the wall, scary, funny, action-packed. I mean, Bruce Campbell is the man of cheese. I mean, any movie he's in, he's cheesy, but any movie he's in, he's also awesome. I mean, even though the Spider-Man movies decreased in value, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies at least, he was always the best part of the Evil Dead movies. I mean, his cameos in those movies were better than Stan Lee's, but, I mean, just really good practical effects, really unique camera angles and styles, especially when the camera goes through the house in one continuous take, and through a car, by the way. I mean, how did they do that? I mean, granted, there was it was not CG, no CG existed back then. You really have to ask yourself for those kind of things to be accomplished back then. How did that happen? But, I mean, the Evil Dead 2 is just, I mean, it's the ultimate, like, awesome. It's the ultimate package of awesome. Horror, comedy, action, as I mentioned. Really funny. If you have to pick one Evil Dead movie to see, this one's the one. Now we're at the top 3 of my favorite horror movies, and aside from the fact that I long have already told you what number 1 is, if you should ever come to me in a conversation about horror movies, if you want something to break the ice, mention these 3 movies and you'll get my attention easily. And just trust me, you will. Number 3 is Psycho. This is actually arguably my favorite Hitchcock movie. It's either between this or Rear Window that I like better. And again, it's like kind of psychological horror, and from Hitchcock, like again, like The Birds. Before I seen this movie, I thought I've seen a lot of parodies of the shower scene in Psycho, so how is this going to be scary? Again, once under Hitchcock's direction, anything that you've seen parodied before, once you actually see the original take, it's scary. I mean, okay, I didn't stay away from a shower after seeing Psycho. I mean, if anything, I went to take a shower right after seeing Psycho, so, but I really can't say why Psycho is, for lack of a better word, psychological horror without spoiling things in the movie. And for those people out there, hopefully it's a small amount of people who've never seen Psycho, I'm doing a disservice by spoiling the movie for you, so I just can't explain how. But if you really want me to, I'm probably going to do a review of Psycho anyway, filled with spoilers, so I can give a bigger take on the movie than what I'm doing here, and this will apply for some other movies on these lists. But I mean, Psycho, just trust me, see the movie, you will, if you don't get scared, you'll at least find it fascinating. Just trust me. It's beyond that shower scene, it is a really, really great movie, and one of Hitchcock's best. Number 2 is a movie that you may have heard of. In fact, there was a movie that came out this year that ties into that movie, and truly a great mix of horror and science fiction, Alien. This, I know a lot of people prefer the sequel Aliens, but I see this more of an action science fiction movie. This is really sci-fi horror, which both movies are really great in their own way. Aliens is good for being an action, sci-fi action. Alien is really good at sci-fi horror. It's a slasher movie, basically in outer space, and as the tagline says, in space no one can hear you scream, so you're in the middle of nowhere. There's a creature on board that you don't know much about, and each of your friends are just getting picked off one after another, and no one can help you. That is something really scary, and that chest burster scene, just having something grow inside of you and then just to burst out of your chest, that will mess you up for a bit. And I mean, it is really slow at times, but that's the point of a horror. The good horror movie builds up its suspense for later on when the creature comes out, or the killer, and Alien does this flawlessly. And you really don't see a lot of the alien, and when you do, it is pretty scary. And it really benefits from having only a select number of people in this movie who are all great. I mean, all of them are great, especially Sigourney Weaver as the iconic Ellen Ripley. I mean, she's the hardest of hard asses when it comes to strong female protagonists. And I mean, what can I say about Alien? It's really scary. It is in a way beautiful at times, but mainly scary. Really well acted, well directed by Ridley Scott, and really has become a classic. Is there any point in going on what number 1 is? Yeah, there is, but if you are one of my best friends, and I've said this before, and if you've seen my earlier videos, and if you're a film buff in general, you know there is one particular movie that is not on this list, or hasn't been on this list until now. And I only feel that 2 notes can explain what movie this is if you really have no idea what. That's right, Jaws. You've heard me talk about this movie in my review, and if not, you are a good friend of mine, and I've talked about this movie to you. What else can I say about Jaws that I have not said over and over and over again? I mean, it is a has the best horror score ever. So simple, great characters, Chief Brody, Matt Hooper, and Quint, benefiting from that happy accident of the shark not working to having a lot of the camera shark attacks be POV shots, which makes it even more scary. Launching the career of Steven Spielberg, the man who would go on to just give us so many more great movies like this. It's Jaws. If you still have not seen it, please do yourself a favor. Go see it. If not for being a horror fan, just see it in general. I don't care if you're not a movie major or a movie buff in general, you still have to see this movie. No matter who you are required to see Jaws before you die. I mean, it is a masterpiece of a film, and there's not any more I can say about this movie that I've already said. And that pretty much does it. Jaws is my all-time favorite horror movie. And that's about it. I'll see you guys later, and don't forget to subscribe. Bye.